On November 24, 1971, a day before Thanksgiving, a man in a dark suit carrying a black briefcase walked up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter in Portland, Oregon. He bought a one-way ticket to Seattle, paying with a $20 bill. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. He was polite, unassuming, just another businessman on a routine flight. He boarded the Boeing 727 Flight 305, took his seat in the rear, 18C, and ordered a bourbon and soda. Shortly after takeoff, as the plane climbed towards the gray, drizzly sky, this quiet man would set in motion one of the most audacious and baffling crimes in American history. A crime that remains unsolved to this day. As the plane leveled off, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. Thinking it was just his phone number, she slipped it into her pocket, unopened. Cooper leaned closer. "Miss," he said calmly, "you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence's world froze. She retrieved the note. The neatly printed words confirmed his threat. He asked her to sit beside him, and for a moment he opened his briefcase. Inside, she saw a terrifying tangle of red cylinders, wires, and a large battery. The man, who would soon be known to the world as D.B. Cooper, was not just a threat. He was prepared. His demands were simple yet staggering: $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle to refuel the plane upon arrival. The pilot, William Scott, immediately radioed the demands to air traffic control. On the ground, a frantic race against time began. Northwest Orient's president authorized the ransom payment, and the FBI scrambled to gather the money and parachutes. They photographed all 10,000 of the $20 bills, creating a record they hoped would one day lead them to their man. Meanwhile, aboard Flight 305, Cooper remained astonishingly calm. He ordered another bourbon, paid for it, and even tried to tip the flight attendant, who, under the circumstances, politely refused. He was described by the crew as thoughtful, well-spoken, and never cruel or agitated. He was in complete control. The other 35 passengers had no idea they were part of a high-stakes hijacking. They were simply told that arrival in Seattle would be delayed due to a minor mechanical issue. For 2 hours, the plane circled Puget Sound, buying time for the authorities on the ground. Finally, at 5:39 p.m., the 727 touched down at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The plane was parked in a remote, brightly lit area, far from the main terminals. The curtains on the cabin windows were drawn to prevent police snipers from getting a clear view. An airline employee, clad only in shorts to prove he was unarmed, approached the aircraft and handed over the knapsack filled with cash and the parachutes. Once Cooper had verified the contents, he kept his end of the bargain. He allowed all passengers and 2 of the flight attendants, including Florence Schaffner, to disembark. He was left with the pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and 1 remaining flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, who had volunteered to stay. The man in the suit was now alone with his loot and his crew. Cooper's plan wasn't over. It was just entering its most daring phase. He instructed the pilots to take off again, this time heading south towards Mexico City. But his flight plan was very specific. The plane was to fly at a low altitude, just 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down, and the wing flaps at 15 degrees. This would keep the airspeed at a relatively slow 200 miles per hour. Most critically, he demanded that the aft air stair, the retractable staircase at the rear of the 727, be left down. The pilots protested, explaining how dangerous and unprecedented this was. Flying with the rear stairs down was simply not done, but Cooper was adamant. He knew what he was doing. He knew the 727 was one of the few commercial aircraft from which it was even possible to jump. Around 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 was back in the air, a lone aircraft cutting through the stormy, pitch-black night. Inside, Cooper calmly instructed Tina Mucklow on how to lower the aft stairs. He then told her and the rest of the crew to go into the cockpit and stay there with the door closed. That was the last any of them ever saw of him. Sometime after 8 p.m., somewhere over the dense, rugged forests of southwestern Washington, the pilots noticed a sudden change in air pressure, indicating the aft door had been opened. The man known as Dan Cooper, clutching his $200,000, had stepped out of a commercial airliner into a freezing, wind-whipped storm and vanished into the night. He jumped into one of the most hostile environments imaginable, a wilderness of mountains and trees, in the middle of a winter storm, with no idea where he would land, and massive manhunt began immediately. The FBI, local police, and hundreds of Army troops scoured the presumed drop zone. They searched on foot, in helicopters, and with planes, but the terrain was unforgiving, and the weather was brutal. They found nothing. No parachute, no briefcase, no money, no body. It was as if D.B. Cooper had evaporated into thin air. The FBI case file grew to be one of the largest in their history, with thousands of leads investigated and over 800 suspects considered and eliminated. They questioned career criminals, paratroopers, and anyone who seemed to fit the vague description. But every lead turned into a dead end. Cooper's true identity remained a complete mystery. For nearly a decade, the case went cold. The legend of D.B. Cooper grew. Was he an experienced paratrooper, a disgruntled veteran, or just an ordinary man who pulled off an extraordinary crime? He became a folk hero to some, a symbol of rebellion who beat the system and got away with it. People wrote songs about him, held festivals in his honor, and debated endless theories in bars and online forums. The man had become a myth. Then, in 1980, a sliver of hope. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram, vacationing with his family along the Columbia River, was digging in the sandy riverbank at a place called Bar. About 5 inches down, his fingers brushed against something. He pulled out 3 rotting bundles of cash. He and his family rushed the money to the authorities. The FBI confirmed the impossible. The serial numbers on the bills matched the ransom money given to D.B. Cooper 9 years earlier. Over the decades, dozens of individuals have been proposed as the real D.B. Cooper. There was Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran who staged a similar hijacking just a few months later, but was caught. There was Dwayne Weber, a World War II vet who confessed to his wife on his deathbed, "I am Dan Cooper." And there was Sheridan Peterson, a skilled smoke jumper and former Boeing employee with a penchant for risk-taking, who matched the physical description. Yet for every compelling suspect, there was contradictory evidence or a lack of definitive proof. DNA tests conducted on a tie Cooper left behind on the plane have so far failed to match any of the main suspects. The more the FBI investigated, the more elusive the truth became. So what happened to D.B. Cooper? Did he survive the jump? Many experts believe it's highly unlikely. Jumping from a plane at 10,000 feet at night into a storm with a wind chill far below freezing, wearing only a suit and loafers, is a recipe for disaster. He could have been killed on impact, died of exposure, or become lost in the vast wilderness. His parachute might not have even opened correctly. This is the most logical explanation. Yet the romantic in all of us wants to believe in the alternative. The idea that this cool, calm, and collected man had planned everything so perfectly that he even accounted for the perilous jump, that he landed safely, hid his money, and quietly slipped back into society, living out his days as an anonymous millionaire, smiling every time he saw his own story on the news. In 2016, after 45 years of active investigation, the FBI officially closed the D.B. Cooper case, concluding that their resources were better spent on other priorities. But they left the door open, stating they would review any specific physical evidence of the parachutes or the ransom money that might emerge. The legend, however, is more alive than ever. D.B. Cooper represents the ultimate unsolved mystery, a ghost story for the modern age. He is the man who boarded a plane, committed a perfect crime, and jumped into history, leaving behind nothing but a name, a legend, and a question that continues to capture our imagination half a century later. Who was D.B. Cooper, and did he get away with it? We may never know for sure, and perhaps that's exactly how he would have wanted it. Thanks so much for watching. The story of D.B. Cooper is one of those timeless tales that just gets more fascinating with age. If you enjoy deep dives into historical mysteries like this one, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. We have plenty more incredible stories to share with you. Drop a comment below with your favorite theory about what happened to Cooper. We'd love to hear it. Until next time, stay curious.